Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Vanessa Rodrigues, and I'm the digital marketing specialist at BindTuning. For those who don't know BindTuning by now, we are one of the leading platforms for connecting and engaging digital workspace and solutions for SharePoint, Office 365, and Microsoft Teams. So we are continuing our webinar series focused on Microsoft Teams. The topic for today is successful project management within Microsoft Teams. With this topic hosted and presented by my co-worker, my colleague Diogo Martins is our senior SharePoint developer. We'll be exploring how you can boost your employees' engagement and you manage your projects within Microsoft Teams and how you can collaborate with people that are relevant to you on your project tasks, how you can bring together your remote teams and find and organize your project, and of course, how you can keep track of your project flow. At the end, we'll have a session for questions and answers. But keep it in mind, you can always, on the chat panel, on the window, you can always type your questions and we'll shortly answer to them at the end. You can anytime request, I'll put it here, a demo for Microsoft Teams by clicking the link that I sent you on the meeting chat or by scanning the QR code that's on your screen. Again, some housekeeping rules. Please keep yourself muted during the meeting and your questions on the panel. I think now it's with you, Diogo. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm Diogo, a SharePoint developer here at BindTuning. And today I'm going to be showing you basically how you can create cool collaboration scenarios for you and your team to help you collaborate, for example, in creating a consulting or managing consulting projects. The scenario we have for you today is based off of our good friend Megan Bowen. So she's recently just taken the responsibility of managing projects for Contoso, and she just started as well a product for a company called Northwind Traders. And we're going to go over basically her process as she updates or keeps up to date on what her team is doing in terms of work for the project, and so how everyone is doing on their tasks, if everything's completed, if not, but also how she herself updates everyone and keeps everyone in the know of what she's doing and how she's doing. But before that, we're actually going to go over a problem that she's having, because as a project manager at Contoso, she's actually having to collaborate not only with the people working these projects, but also with the other projects or project managers on the team. And recently, they've had a bit of trouble with keeping up with what everyone is doing at any one time. So it's making it hard for them to collaborate. Fortunately, she's already come up with an idea, and I think this is our cue to jump onto the demo. So she has already gone through the trouble of actually gathering information of all of the projects that are already going on, and she has basically condensed them all into a SharePoint list with a lot of information about each of the projects. So who the project is for, what's the title, brief description in the title of what the project is for, and as well as, of course, the unique identifier for the projects that they use internally to know what the project is, as well as other information like the status: is it open, is it closed, the logo, when was it started, how many hours they're contracted to work the project, who's in charge of the project, and this is an information that they really need to know to help them track how many projects are with each person. And then she also has for each project basically the how many tasks there are still on the project, how many of them are closed, and then how many of them are open and how close they are to finishing. These last two being calculated fields so that they don't have to keep filling information manually. So she's already done the job of condensing or compiling all of these project information into one place in SharePoint, but she knows herself and she knows her colleagues, and their main tools of work are basically Outlook and Microsoft Teams. Because they're mostly managing the teams, it's these project teams, and it's a lot of communication going around. And so having to know that to know information on the project, they have to go through, find the team in Teams, and then jump through to find the link to SharePoint, and then finding this list inside of that SharePoint. She knows she's not going to do that. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be a lot of work for her colleagues. So she has been thinking how she can bring this information over to Microsoft Teams, because then it would make it so that this information is all condensed in one place, and it's going to make it a lot easier and more accessible for them to actually find it. So how is she going to do that? So she's decided to basically create, in the project management team, she's decided to create a dashboard that will show those projects all in one place in a more friendly, readable way than the list, which has also a lot of information to take up all at once. So to do that, she's actually going to use the BindTuning filters webpart. And this is a webpart that was created to help you create basically dynamic dashboards using tiles, and also give you the ability to filter the content of that dashboard. And when I say give you the ability to filter, I mean the end user. So the end user can actually filter what he's seeing at any time. Filtering or configuring this webpart requires two lists. The first one is, well, it's already been created by Megan, and that's going to be the data source list. And this is the list where your data lives, the data that you want to present on the dashboard. The second list is going to be a list with a more specific template, so it's fixed on the columns it needs to have according to how the webpart works, and this is where the webpart is going to store information of how it's going to present the information from the source list. So basically, the template list is going to house the translators that will say how this information transforms into a tile. So to create one of those lists, we can actually do that straight from Teams here from the webpart. We just need to think of a name. So let's say it's the project template list. Okay, and we hit create, and the webpart is automatically going to connect to it. And now all we have to do is actually connect to the projects list so we can get our content. So let's go ahead and copy that site. So this is the site for the project management team. And inside, we have, of course, a lot of lists. And the one we want to look for is the projects, which is the one that Megan had set up. So we're going to get all the items, we're going to save. And so now the webpart is connected to both of these lists. And the next step is going to be to actually define the template. So say or tell the webpart how we want to present that content. So to do that, once we're connected to the list, we have the little plus sign. we click on that and we say that we want to add a new template, this is going to give us a nice custom form to help us create the content. So the part we want to focus on right now is the front tile settings here, where we're able to set a background for the tiles. And this can be, for example, just a solid color in red, for example. And then the captions is where we can add some text. So, for example, hello world, the classic. And if we click on preview here at the bottom, before we actually commit to this, we're going to see that this is going to generate 7 different tiles, all in red and with the hello world. So why 7 tiles? We get 7 tiles because currently the list has 7 different projects. And so, of course, the Webpart for each of those projects is running through this template, and it's creating a tile for each item. Obviously, the point of this Webpart isn't to create the same tile multiple times based on how many items you have on a list. What you want to do is bring that content over to the Webpart. So to do that, we actually have a special syntax, which is basically just 2 curly brackets, opened and closed, and in the middle of them we type in the internal name of the column. So for example, if we want to know the value here for the title, we just type those curly brackets. Inside we type title, and now if we click on preview, we'll see that now for each of these styles, we have the title of each project. So marketing portal, custom absences, internet proof of concept. And of course, these tokens, this special syntax, we can mix and match it with other things. So right now we have the title, but let's say we actually want to have the company name as well to better identify who this project relates to. So we can go and say company name, hit preview, and now we have for each of them the exact company that we're working for. So now that we have the information here, we will want to as well format the text, right? So right now it's just black text with the default text size of the page. But if you look here at the top, we'll see that we have a couple of controls to help us manage the size and the color, the alignments of the content. So for example, if I were to click on H1, this is going to make this first line turn it into an HTML header. And so basically it's going to make the text really, really big. Of course, if we wanted to make it just a tiny bit smaller, or not a tiny bit, a whole lot smaller, we could go for the header 5, header 6 being the smallest of them all. And we'll see that, well, header 5 is actually very close to default text size. So let's go with header 3. Okay, and we see that, it's not as big, it's middle ground. And then if we wanted to, let's say, hit header 6, so this is the smallest one, you'll see that it's going to make it just a tiny little bit smaller than normal. So then, of course, we can just select a color here, for example. Let's make it white just to contrast a bit better with the red background. And there we go. Of course, a picture is worth more than a million words. So one very cool thing to bring out into the dashboard would, of course, be the logo. This would help us identify, more than the company name even, it would help us identify more easily who the project is for. So to do that, we see that the Webpart actually has a field here for the background. So if we select image, and once again, we use the same syntax for the logo column. Now when we hit preview, we'll see that we actually get the image for each of those projects as the background. We do also notice, of course, that text in front of images, this is always a big problem. You never know what the image is going to be, so you can never know what is the best color to use, because there's not going to be an overall good color to use. So to combat that, we can always give our caption a little bit of a background. So for example, we can make it black. This, of course, would have the drawback that now we see the text, but we don't see the image. So we can always give some transparency here to the background. This can be done through this picker or through the color picker here as well to make things a little bit more easier. Usually we recommend the background to be black 40%, just a personal preference. And we'll see that now we can see both the text and we can see the image itself. So just to put the finalize the styles here on the dashboard, we're also just going to move it so that our Webparts, our tiles Webparts, it has 3 sections that you can add content to. They're not exclusive, so you can have some content at the top, for example, and you can have some content here at the bottom. Let's just put the transparency here as well, and it will add, so basically the content to both of those places. Okay, so right now we have the text, that dynamic text for the tile at the bottom section, and then at the top we just have that static tile. That's going to be the same for each and every project. So let's remove that. Maybe make this just a bit smaller or even bold, just so it doesn't take so much space. And I think, well, I think that's it for styling the tile. So now that we have come up with a style for the tiles, another really cool thing, well, obviously you can't have a dashboard if it's just going to be visual. It has to have an action. It needs to send your user somewhere. So since Megan in her list, she already has set the project link for each of these projects, we can also, just scrolling up a bit here on the form, see that we have a clickable link, and using the same syntax as before, we can type in the name of the internal name of the column, which I think it's project link. It is, yes. And so now when we hit save, we're going to see that each of these is going to link us to the respective project. And so this, of course, would work as a very basic dashboard for showing all of the projects. But a thing that is going to be immediately necessary once you start having a lot more projects is to be able to filter what's being shown and what isn't. For example, for the most part, when you're going to come here and see what projects are open, well, you don't want to see the ones that have already been closed. So to create some filters here with the Webparts, if we go here into the filtering options section, we have a field where we can set what columns we want to filter the dashboard by. So for example, a couple of cool ones we have on the list. We could filter, of course, by the status. We could filter by the year to get things that are started last year or just this year. And finally, this would be the most useful probably, the manager in charge of each of the projects. So all we have to do is go here on the fields. We said we wanted the status, so we write status, and we'll see that automatically the Webpart creates a drop-down, and the options are filled automatically based on the values from each of the item. And so now we can filter out by the projects that are currently closed and the ones that are still happening at this time. And to add more filters, we just separate everything with a comma, and now we can filter out by year, so see what was started last year, what was started this year, and of course manager, so we can see who's working on which project. So Bianca, for example, is working on these 2. Cameron White is working on these 3. And Megan, of course, is working on Nevada Trading Co., which is her previous project from last month, and the Northwind Traders, which is the one that she has just started. So now, when she or her teammates they need to see what projects are currently going on, how many are being done by each manager, they can very easily come here through Teams, so they don't need to leave their main work tool. And they will be able to find the information that they need without having to go asking around the place, looking for whoever has this information. Okay, and so with that, we've helped ourselves solve the problem of collaborating with our peers, the other project managers. And now, so let's go ahead and see how she actually collaborates with the people working on her projects. So you'll see that at Contoso, they're basically creating a team for each of the projects. Okay, and this is important because this allows them to filter out who makes a part of the team, so that the content isn't accessible to everyone. Sometimes that's very important, depending on the project. But also by doing this, they're able to actually invite to the team external users from the organization that they're working with. For example, in this team, Megan has invited the people she's working with from Northwind Traders, so that they can actually collaborate directly with her team and keep up to date on how everything is going on at any time. The team so it has already two default tabs, the posts and files that are on every team automatically. The files already is populated with some documents that they've had to add already, including some resources from Northwind Traders, like their style guides and a couple of images that they're allowed to use in their intranet. But apart from that, you'll see we have a bunch more tiles that'll help the people working here to actually know how everything's going. So on the Home tab, we have a dashboard, and this dashboard is using a different webpart from the one we just built. So the one we used earlier was using the filters webpart, and that one is for creating dynamic dashboards. This one is using the tiles webpart, and the tiles webpart is for creating static dashboards. Although, so what that means is you have to create each individual tile here. It's not like the filters in that sense. But that said, the content itself, it can be dynamic. So for example, we have here the open tasks, the closed tasks, total tasks. You'll notice that this content is actually being extracted directly here from the project's list. So if we go to the for the Nevada project, we'll see that we have total tasks here at the closed tasks, and later on we have those calculated fields here for the completion and open tasks. And the way these fields are being surfaced here onto the webpart is basically we have a couple of ways that you can create webparts or you can create tiles. One of the types is what we call the smart tile, and the smart tile works a bit similarly to what we just did with the filters. Basically, we connect the tile to a list. In this case, we're connecting to the projects list in the project management team. And then we can also filter out the content that's going to be shown on the tile. So in here, we're showing just one item, and that's the one with the code of the project. And so to then show the content from that item, if we scroll down here to the web part, to the form and we go to the bottom zone, or is it at the center? On the center. So you'll see that on this particular tile, we're using that same syntax as before to create this token for the open tasks. And so dynamically, this content is always up to date to what is on the project's list. And so whenever someone comes into the team, they can be sure that this information is all up to date. And they can have a very quick overview of how the project is currently going. Apart from these dynamic tabs, it also has some more static tabs. So just information on who the project manager here is, in this case, Megan, her contact information. And these two have been set, these two tiles have been created as links so that when you click on them, they actually open either your email application and automatically send an email to Megan, or in the case of the work phone, it's going to call, well, I don't have an application for that, but it's going to use, for example, Skype or whatever application you have to actually call the person through their phone. And of course, the deadline so that everyone is at all times aware of when this project is meant to end, and so that they know if they have to hurry or if they still have some room to wiggle around. So how does this actually get populated? So in the projects, we'll see that we have some tasks. Obviously, this isn't done manually, okay? So people don't go to the project management list and then automatically increase that number when a new task is added. Instead, on the tasks tab, we have a planner. And on this planner, we have all of the tasks that people are currently in charge of doing. So right now, we're going to see that Delia is working on some research for target audiences. Grady is building out a couple of drafts. Megan has to send a follow-up to the meeting that they just had yesterday, and which she actually has already done. So if she wants to update the progress there, she can just come over here and click on the task, and where it says progress, she can say it's now completed. And so now we have two completed tasks. And the way this, and by doing this, there's actually a flow that's been created for when a task is completed, and for when a task is updated, and for when a task is created. And basically, when these flows trigger, what they're going to do is very simply, they're going to get all of the tasks in the current planner that got updated. They're going to set the total tasks and completed tasks variables to 0. For each of the tasks, it's going to increment the total tasks so that the flow can see how many tasks there are in total for this plan. And if any of them are completed, it's going to update the completed tasks variable. Once those are with the proper values, the flow is then going to connect to the list here with the projects. And it's, of course, going to update the total tasks and closed tasks columns for the project that the flow is running for. And with that, the completion and open tasks, since they're calculated columns, they're going to update automatically. And so now that Megan has closed her task to follow up on the meeting, in, let's say, 5-10 minutes, that flow is going to be triggered. That's going to be depending on the plan that you have for flow. And of course, the list is going to update for the projects. And as such, the dashboard we have here on the home is also going to be updated. But like I said, it's going to take 5 to 10 minutes. So not only can she update her tasks, but she can also see what everyone's up to. And of course, now Nestor and Alex, who are the people from Northwind, they can always see what her team is up to at all times, so that they can see that progress is actually being made and they're actually doing something and working on what was agreed. But speaking of teammates, so if we go to the next tab, Megan has also created a web part using the BindTuning people, or a tab using the BindTuning people web part to showcase everyone that's involved on the project. So in here, you'll see that she's showing all the external users, but also the internal users working on this project. And from here, everyone is going to have access to the information, to the contact information, if they need to basically, let's say, they need to create or send an email to Alex, or Alex needs to send an email to Grady. Very easily, they can find their emails through here. And much like in the tiles, in the tiles that we created, these links are fully functional. So when you click on the email or when you click on the phone, that's going to open up the corresponding application, and so it makes it a lot easier. So basically, what this means is that if Grady finishes something and he needs to send an update to someone else on either teams, he doesn't have to go and open up Outlook and then create a new email and do all of that. He can do everything straight here through Teams. So he just clicks on the email, the new email form pops up, and he just types it out and clicks send. That's it. And of course, the information here is fully customizable. Okay, so let's say Megan doesn't actually want the phone numbers, the work phones, to be available at all times to the external users. So she can actually go here in people options, and she has a toggle for all of the information. And she's already toggled off Skype contact, and now she can, of course, toggle off the phone contact. And so now, if we refresh, we'll see that whenever people come here, they're only really going to have access to the emails, so that they're not calling anyone in the middle of the night, for example. And speaking of being in the middle of the night, it's important for them to actually collaborate between time zones. I haven't said this yet, but Northwind traders, they're based in the UK. Megan and Delia, they're working off of Seattle, and Grady has just moved to the offices in New York. So they're all working across different time zones, and when they need to schedule meetings or know if it's okay to contact someone, they of course need to know what time it is in all of these three places at once. How do they? So they can, of course, go on another site, go on Google and search this information, but why have to go through that whole process of having another application open and having to look for it when you can have it here directly on Teams? So using the BindTuning World Clock web part, Megan has set up one clock for each of the time zones, and this way everyone can keep up to date or keep track of what time it is in each of these zones, so that they know if scheduling a meeting is going to be 4 a.m. for one of the teams, then maybe they need to schedule that meeting for a bit later. And keeping track of meetings and keeping track of deadlines, that's also something that's very important in a project like this. So we've added as well a tab for showing the upcoming events. So on the calendar tab, we're using the BindTuning calendar web part, and this web part is connected to a calendar in SharePoint, which is showing the upcoming meetings, upcoming deadlines that they have coming up. And with this, the team can always have an idea for what's coming up. If they're getting too close to a deadline, if they're still have time and of course see the roadmap for what's expected throughout this project. You'll see that important deadlines have already been set here on this calendar. For example, go live and a final board review that Northwind is going to be having before they actually approve everything 100%. And in order to have this board review, of course, Northwind has to have their final delivery date by the 15th of April, which is the day before. So this way, everyone can basically know what is expected of them in terms of dates for this project. And again, they don't have to keep asking. They don't have to go see emails to remember that. They don't have to go and see notes from the meetings of what they discussed. They have the information always here available, very easy to access. Yeah, and speaking of meeting notes as well, we have added, or Megan has added a OneNote for keeping track of meeting notes. So every time they have a meeting, they're meant to go over to the OneNote, and adding meeting notes actually through OneNote is super easy. This is why they've added OneNote. If you go on any page and you go on the insert tab, we'll see that there's an option here for inserting meeting details. By clicking that, we just need to go to the date that the meeting happened. In this case, it was actually yesterday on the 11th. And you'll see that we have a meeting here for the project kickoff that they had. So by clicking on that, the information for the meeting is going to be added here into OneNote. So who participated, the link and the invitation message, and of course, the date of when it happened. And now all we need to do is actually just paste in the notes that were taken during the call. I have them here still in my clipboard. All right, and so whenever, in the future, if they need to remember what was discussed during the kickoff, what was agreed upon, what were the needs of the client at the time, they can always come here to the list of meetings and find the one that they need the information from, and everything is going to be here on the notes. And finally, this project is actually for creating a modern internet. Northwind is migrating from Classic at the moment, and so since there's going to be a lot of images being traded around, and as I showed you earlier, there were actually those images, pre-approved images from Northwind that they cannot use on their internet. It's going to be more useful to have a little gallery of images that are readily or easily seen than having the default documents Webparts from Teams. So from here, they get an immediate preview of the images. If they need to see them with more detail, of course, you can always click on that, and you can see the full picture as well as details. This is probably on who uploaded, and also if there's any extra information is going to show up there. And this is going to come in very handy, especially for Grady, because when he needs to go looking for images, well, if he knows what the image's name is, he can, of course, search for it. But even if he doesn't, using SharePoint's own features, he's actually able to look, for example, for images that are indoors or images that are outdoors. Okay, and these are tags that were generated automatically by Microsoft, and it's going to show or filter out based on that. So it's going to make it a lot easier for him to find the information that he needs in terms of when he's going to create the visual image for this project. And so that's basically how Megan can collaborate. And of course, the way she did it, her coworkers can do the exact same thing. And a big advantage of this is that their collaboration is always happening inside of Teams. So if they need to talk to each other more directly, they can, of course, talk inside the team. If they need to have another type of communication like through email, they can find that communication details through the Teammates tab. If I go back to the home, we'll see that this didn't quite update the right way, but we can see that these styles, they're going to update automatically and always give the right information or a good overview of how the project is going. So basically, they can always collaborate straight from here. They don't have to go jumping around between applications. They don't have to go on SharePoint. They don't have to go on Outlook. They just stay here and they can see and get all their information from here. So it becomes a lot more productive and a lot easier to use. And the easier it is to use, the easier it is to collaborate. So that's the example we had for you. And I hope you can get some ideas from that. And with that, I'm going to pass on to you.
So thank you again, Diogo. This was really, really great. I'm really ready to start my marketing projects. I bet that you are too. So we are opening for questions. So we have some here. Let me publish them and we'll be answering to them. So Paul, can you do background conditional formatting based on the value read from the data source? Example, red background for late projects, greens for on time, etc. And the same question will go for BindTuning tiles web part, conditional formatting or hard-coded colors for tile background.
Yes, you can definitely have conditional formatting on the tiles and on the filters. So right now we are connecting that template here. We're connecting to the logo, and since the logo has a URL, by default, the Webparts is going to assume it's an image, and so it's going to draw the image as the background as an image. In here, I won't be able to do this because the logo column is set to be an hyperlink. But if this were set to text column, I would be able to just type red or an hexadecimal value or an RGBA code. And the Webparts would be able to interpret that and draw the background accordingly. Okay, so the process would still be the same. You would still need to set this as image, but then it would be able to detect that it's actually just a static color, and it would render out that color.
Anyone else? Do we have any other questions? You just need to type them on the chat window, otherwise we cannot see them and answer to them. So, okay, I think we have a new one. Oh, thank you, Paul. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. They are very helpful for everyone, I bet. So, anyone else? I guess not. So, Diogo, I don't know, do you want to say something else to wrap up?
No, I think that's it for me. Yeah.
So we want to thank you for joining us on this webinar today. And anytime, if you have any other questions, you just send an email to info@bindtuning.com. You just follow us on our social accounts at ByteSkins for Twitter, BindTuning, and at LinkedIn and Facebook. We are on Instagram as well. So what's next? We'll be having a webinar in March, so keep an eye on it, on your email, on our social. We'll be announcing the topic, for sure, something relatable to you as well. We'll be present at the Scottish Summit in Glasgow on 29th of February. And again, you can just scan the QR code on your screen for request a demo. Wait, I think we have some, no, it's just thank you too. And well, thank you once again, and I hope you enjoy it. We'll be sending the recording within the few days to your email, so you can watch it afterwards, play around with your Microsoft Teams. And once again, thank you, Diogo, and everyone that joined us today. Have a good day. Bye.